Have you ever stopped to wonder why you made a certain choice? Why you picked one option over another? Why you said what you said? Or even why you're watching this video right now? It probably feels like you made those decisions freely, consciously, in control of your own thoughts. But what if I told you that might not be true? What if your choices weren't really yours? What if, before you even became aware of a decision, your brain had already made it for you? This is the paradox of free will. It's the idea that while we feel like we're in control, science, philosophy, and even physics suggest that our decisions might be predetermined, shaped by our biology, our past, or even by fundamental laws of the universe that we have no say in. This question isn't just some abstract philosophical debate. It has real consequences for how we see ourselves, how we build societies, and even how we understand concepts like justice, responsibility, and morality. If we don't truly have free will, then do we really deserve credit for our successes? Should we be blamed for our mistakes? If everything we do is just the result of neurons firing and physical forces playing out, then who are we really? For centuries, philosophers have debated this question. Some argue that free will is an illusion, that every action we take is just the inevitable result of a long chain of cause and effect. Others insist that we do have the power to choose, that our ability to reflect, to change, and to control our actions is proof that free will is real. And then there are those who believe in compatibilism, the idea that free will and determinism can actually exist together. But the biggest twist? Science might already have the answer. Neuroscientific experiments have shown that our brains make decisions before we're even aware of them. That means that the moment you think you're making a choice, your brain has already decided for you. So, does that mean free will is just a convincing illusion? Or is there something deeper at play? The paradox of free will forces us to confront some of the deepest mysteries of existence. Are we truly in control, or is everything we do already set in motion? And if we aren't free, then what does that mean for the way we live our lives? These are questions with no easy answers, but one thing is certain. If free will is an illusion, it's the most convincing one we've ever known. Think about the last time you made a decision, maybe what to eat for breakfast, what to wear today, or even the choice to watch this video. It felt like you were in control, right? Like you weighed your options and picked the one that made the most sense to you. But what if that sense of control was just an illusion? What if, instead of freely making choices, your brain was already deciding for you before you even became aware of it? What if everything you do, every action you take, is not the result of conscious thought, but rather the outcome of biological programming, shaped by experiences and external influences you don't even notice? This idea that free will is an illusion and that we are, in many ways, programmed to act, has fascinated scientists and philosophers for centuries. And recent research in neuroscience suggests that our brains may be making decisions before we even realize it. Let's start with the now famous experiment by neuroscientist Benjamin Libet in the 1980s. Libet and his team set out to study the connection between conscious decision making and brain activity. In the experiment, participants were asked to move their fingers at a time of their choosing while watching a clock. At the same time, Libet measured their brain activity using EEG scans. The results were shocking. The brain showed activity up to 300 milliseconds before the person was even aware of making the decision to move their finger. In other words, before you consciously think, "I'm going to move my hand," your brain has already started preparing for that movement. Later studies using fMRI scans pushed this even further. A study in 2008 by neuroscientist John Lynn Haynes found that brain activity could predict a person's decision up to 7-10 seconds before they were aware of it. Imagine that. Before you consciously decide to do something, your brain has already made the choice seconds earlier. This raises an unsettling question. If your brain is making decisions before you're aware of them, then who is really in control? We like to think that our choices come from a place of rational thought and conscious awareness. But if our brain is operating behind the scenes, pulling the strings without our knowledge, does that mean free will is just an illusion? The role of biology: are we just highly complex machines? If neuroscience suggests that we don't consciously control our decisions, then what does shape them? The answer lies in biology, genetics, and past experiences. At our core, we are biological machines. Our brains are made up of neurons, electrical signals, and chemical processes, all of which work together to generate thoughts, emotions, and actions. Every decision we make is the result of countless neurochemical reactions, shaped by both genetics and environment. For example, studies have shown that dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation, plays a key role in decision-making. If your brain releases a surge of dopamine when thinking about a particular option, you're more likely to choose it, even if you think you're making a rational choice. Even emotions, which feel deeply personal, are often pre-programmed responses shaped by evolution. Fear, for instance, is a survival mechanism designed to keep us safe from danger. If you've ever had a gut feeling to avoid something or someone, that might not be intuition. It could be your brain running a survival algorithm based on past experiences. Then there's genetics. Studies have found that certain personality traits, like risk-taking behavior, impulsivity, and even political preferences, have a strong genetic component. This means that even decisions that feel deeply personal might be, in part, hardwired into us from birth. So, if our choices are shaped by biology, brain chemistry, and genetics, are we really choosing it all? Or are we just acting out a script written by forces beyond our control? If you've ever had a strong reaction to something, whether it's a smell that brings back childhood memories, or a song that makes you feel nostalgic, then you've experienced how deeply our past experiences shape us. From the moment we're born, our brains start absorbing information. We are conditioned by our environment, our culture, our family, and our experiences. Over time, these influences become the foundation for how we see the world, what we believe, and even what choices we make. Take, for example, the classic experiment by psychologist Ivan Pavlov, who conditioned dogs to associate a bell with food. Over time, the dogs would start to salivate just from hearing the bell, even if no food was present. Humans work in a similar way. If we repeatedly experience positive reinforcement for a certain behavior, we are more likely to repeat it. If we experience punishment or negative consequences, we are more likely to avoid it. This conditioning happens so gradually and subtly that we often don't realize how much of our behavior is shaped by it. Your taste in music, your food preferences, your fears, even your moral beliefs, all of these have been influenced by years of experiences, many of which you didn't choose. So when you make a decision, how much of it is truly yours? Are you making a free choice, or are you just responding to a lifetime of conditioning? Despite all of this, we feel like we have free will. When we choose between two options, it feels like an open-ended choice, not something pre-programmed. So why do we feel this way? Some researchers believe that our brains create a narrative, a sense of self that makes us feel like the authors of our own actions. This is called the post hoc rationalization theory, meaning that after our brains have already made a decision, our consciousness creates a story to explain why we made it. In other words, we rationalize our choices after the fact. We think, I chose this because it made sense, when in reality, the choice may have been shaped by unconscious factors that we never even noticed. This could explain why people often struggle to explain their own decisions. Have you ever chosen something only to later wonder why? Have you ever reacted to a situation in a way that surprised even yourself? That could be your brain's hidden programming in action. So, are we truly free? If our brains make decisions before we're aware of them, if our biology, chemistry, and past experiences shape how we act, and if we rationalize our choices after the fact, then what does that mean for free will? It's a deeply unsettling question. If everything is predetermined, then do we actually have any control over our lives? Or are we just watching events unfold, believing we are in control, when in reality, we're just following a script written by our brain, our genes, and our past? The illusion of choice is one of the most fascinating and troubling ideas in science and philosophy. It challenges everything we think we know about who we are and how we make decisions. But before we assume that free will is dead, we have to dig deeper. Is there any way to break free from these hidden influences? Can we reclaim control over our choices? Or is there another way to think about free will, one that allows for both determinism and human agency? The paradox of free will isn't as simple as yes or no. It's a mystery that forces us to question everything, including whether we're even capable of questioning at all. Free will is one of those questions that bridges both science and philosophy. It's not just about neurons and brain activity. It's also about meaning, morality, and what it means to be human. On one side, you have neuroscientists and physicists who argue that everything in the universe follows cause and effect, leaving no room for true choice. On the other, philosophers and thinkers have spent centuries debating whether we have some kind of agency over our actions. So, who's right? Does science prove that free will is an illusion? Or is there something more to human choice, something science hasn't yet explained? From a purely scientific perspective, free will doesn't really fit into how we understand the universe. The laws of physics, biology, and neuroscience suggest that everything operates based on cause and effect, including our thoughts, decisions, and actions. Take physics, for example. If you drop a ball, it falls. Not because it chooses to, but because gravity acts on it. If you heat water, it boils. Not because it decides to, but because heat excites the molecules. Everything in the universe follows deterministic laws, and according to many scientists, we are no different. Our brains are physical systems made up of neurons, electrical impulses, and chemical reactions. Every thought we have, every action we take, is the result of previous brain activity. There's no magical free will force guiding our decisions. It's just biology playing out in real time. This deterministic view suggests that if we had perfect knowledge of the brain and all its inputs, every experience, every biological process, every memory, then we could predict every decision a person will ever make. In other words, we are not actually choosing. We are just following the rules of our biology. And the most unsettling part, many neuroscientific experiments seem to confirm this, as we discussed in the previous chapter. Studies like Benjamin Libet's experiment showed that brain activity related to decision making happens before we are consciously aware of making a decision. More recent research has taken this even further, showing that scientists can predict a person's choices before they even realize they've made them. This raises a troubling question. If our brains decide before we become aware of it, then who or what is really in control? While science seems to paint a picture of a deterministic world, philosophers aren't convinced. Some argue that, even if our decisions are influenced by biology and past experiences, that doesn't necessarily mean we lack free will. It just means that free will isn't as simple as we once thought. One counterargument comes from Compatibilism, a philosophical view that suggests free will and determinism can coexist. According to compatibilists, just because an action has causes doesn't mean it isn't free. After all, we don't say a person is forced to do something just because their actions have reasons. If you choose to eat chocolate ice cream instead of vanilla, your decision might be influenced by past experiences, personal preferences, or even genetics, but it still feels like your choice. Compatibilists argue that free will isn't about making decisions in a vacuum, but about acting in accordance with our own desires and reasoning. Even if those desires are shaped by external factors, we still experience them as our own, and that's what matters. For example, let's say you walk into a coffee shop and order a cappuccino instead of a latte. Was that decision completely free, or was it influenced by past experiences, advertising, or your mood that day? A neuroscientist might say it was predetermined, but a philosopher might argue that as long as you weren't forced to choose cappuccino, then the choice was still yours. This debate goes even deeper when we consider consciousness itself. Some philosophers argue that free will exists because we are self-aware, capable of reflecting on our thoughts and making reasoned decisions. Unlike a rock rolling down a hill, we can consider our options, imagine different outcomes, and change our minds. That ability, they argue, is a form of freedom. But is self-awareness enough? Or is it just another layer of the illusion? There's another area of science that complicates this debate: quantum mechanics. Unlike classical physics, which is predictable and deterministic, quantum mechanics is based on probability and uncertainty. At the smallest scales, particles behave in ways that seem random. Scientists can't predict exactly where an electron will be at any given moment, only the probability of where it might be. Some argue that this randomness means the universe isn't fully deterministic, and that maybe, just maybe, this randomness creates room for free will. But here's the problem. Even if quantum mechanics introduces randomness, does that really give us control over our decisions? If our choices are determined by random quantum events instead of brain chemistry, does that make us any more free? Some argue that quantum mechanics doesn't save free will. It just replaces determinism with randomness, which still doesn't mean we have control. Others believe that quantum uncertainty plays a role in human consciousness, possibly allowing for a type of decision-making that isn't purely mechanical. The truth is, no one knows for sure. We don't fully understand consciousness, and we don't fully understand quantum mechanics. Until we do, this remains one of the biggest gray areas in the free will debate. So, who wins? Science or philosophy? If you're looking for a clear answer, you might be disappointed. Science provides strong evidence that our decisions are shaped by biology and external factors, often before we're aware of them. But philosophy argues that this doesn't necessarily mean we lack free will. It just means that free will might not be what we originally thought it was. Some believe that free will is an illusion, a trick our brains play on us to make us feel in control. Others believe that as long as we act in accordance with our desires, that is free will, even if those desires are shaped by forces beyond our awareness. And then there are those who argue that science simply hasn't discovered the full picture yet. Maybe consciousness plays a role we don't yet understand. Maybe quantum mechanics holds the key. Maybe there is an aspect of free will that exists beyond the realm of what we can currently measure. Until we have a definitive answer, we are left with a paradox. Does it even matter? At the end of the day, whether free will is real or not, we experience life as if we have it. Even if every choice is shaped by unseen forces, we still feel like we're choosing. We still experience emotions, and we still make decisions that affect our lives and the world around us. So maybe the real question isn't, do we have free will? But rather, does it make a difference if we don't? If we are just complex machines running a biological program, does that make life meaningless? Or does it make it even more incredible that in a universe of physics and chemistry, something as strange as self-awareness has emerged. The debate between science and philosophy over free will isn't just about understanding the brain. It's about understanding who we are, and maybe, in the end, that's the most important choice we have. Free will isn't just a philosophical question. It's something that directly shapes how we live, how we judge others, and how we build our societies. Our entire legal system, moral values, and social structures are based on the idea that people are responsible for their actions. But if free will is an illusion, what does that mean for accountability, justice, and even our sense of right and wrong? If we don't truly control our actions, then can we really blame people for their mistakes? Can we praise them for their achievements? If every decision is the result of biology, brain chemistry, and life experiences, then are criminals actually responsible for their crimes? And if they aren't, does punishment even make sense? These questions don't just exist in academic debates. They have real-world consequences. Whether we believe in free will or not affects how we treat others, how we design laws, and even how we think about success and failure. Imagine two people commit the exact same crime. Let's say they both steal money. Society tells us that these two individuals should be punished for their actions. But what if one of them grew up in an environment filled with poverty, abuse, and trauma, while the other grew up in a privileged, stable home with endless opportunities? Did they both really have the same level of choice? We like to think that people are fully responsible for their actions, but science suggests that many behaviors are influenced by factors beyond conscious control. Studies show that childhood experiences, genetics, and even brain chemistry play a massive role in shaping behavior. For example, neuroscientists have found that brain damage, chemical imbalances, and even genetic factors can make some people more prone to impulsive or violent behavior. In one famous case, a man with a brain tumor suddenly developed uncontrollable urges and engaged in criminal activity, urges that disappeared once the tumor was removed. So, if someone commits a crime because of a biological factor beyond their control, are they still responsible? And if not, where do we draw the line? Our legal system is built on the assumption that people can make rational choices and should be held accountable for their actions. But if we accept that many decisions are shaped by unconscious forces, does that mean we should rethink punishment? Should we focus less on punishing and more on rehabilitating people, fixing the underlying causes that led to their behavior? This is where free will becomes a practical issue, not just a philosophical one. If we don't actually have full control over our actions, then how do we build a fair and just society? The idea of free will doesn't just affect how we treat criminals, it also affects how we think about success and failure. We tend to believe that hard work leads to success and that people who succeed deserve their achievements. But what if that isn't completely true? What if success is just as much a product of circumstances, genetics, and luck as it is of effort? For example, intelligence, creativity, and even personality traits like motivation and discipline are strongly influenced by genetics and environment. Some people are born into wealthy families with access to good schools, strong networks, and endless opportunities, while others struggle against extreme disadvantages from birth. Does that mean success is predetermined? Not entirely, but it does mean that some people start the race with a huge head start. If free will doesn't exist in the way we think, should we still give all the credit to people who succeed? Should we blame those who struggle? If everything we do is the result of forces beyond our control, then how much of our accomplishments actually belong to us? Some argue that realizing free will is an illusion should make us more compassionate, that we should stop glorifying success as if it's purely based on effort and stop looking down on people who fail as if they simply didn't try hard enough. If we have no free will, can we be good or evil? One of the biggest arguments for free will is that without it, morality doesn't make sense. If people don't freely choose their actions, then how can we say that someone is good or evil? Think about it. We admire kindness, generosity, and courage because we believe people choose to act that way. But if all actions are predetermined, if every act of kindness or cruelty is just the result of brain chemistry and life experiences, then can we really say someone is a good or bad person? Some philosophers argue that moral responsibility exists even without free will, that even if our actions are determined, we still experience them as choices, and that's enough for morality to matter. Others argue that realizing free will is an illusion should push us toward more empathy, that instead of judging people as good or evil, we should look at the causes of their actions and work toward solutions that improve society for everyone. For example, if crime is largely influenced by poverty, trauma, and brain chemistry, then instead of simply punishing criminals, wouldn't it be more logical to address the root causes of crime? If someone is a product of their environment, maybe the best way to reduce violence isn't more punishment, but better education, better mental health care, and better social support systems. Would society fall apart without free will? One of the biggest fears about rejecting free will is that it might lead to chaos. Some people argue that if we tell people their choices don't really matter, they might start acting irresponsibly. Would people still follow laws? Would they still work hard? Would they still try to improve themselves if they thought they weren't really in control? It's a valid concern, but studies suggest that the effects of believing in free will versus not believing in it are complicated. Some experiments have shown that when people are told free will doesn't exist, they are more likely to cheat on tests or act selfishly, as if realizing they aren't really responsible frees them from moral obligations. But other research suggests that losing belief in free will can make people more compassionate, more understanding of others, and more willing to support policies that help reduce inequality. The truth is, society functions because we act as if we have free will, whether it's real or not. Even if every action is determined, we experience life as if we are making choices, and maybe that's all that matters. So, what does this mean for us? If free will doesn't exist, at least not in the way we traditionally think, then we have to rethink how we judge others, how we build fair societies, and how we understand success and failure. But at the same time, rejecting free will doesn't mean we stop trying, even if our decisions are influenced by factors beyond our control. That doesn't mean we should give up on improving ourselves or helping others. Instead, maybe understanding why people do what they do can help us build a world that is more fair, compassionate, and just. Maybe the real question isn't whether free will exists or not, but rather, what do we do with the knowledge that our choices might not be as free as we think? The answer to that question might just shape the future of our society. So, do we have free will? The truth is, free will isn't all or nothing. It's a spectrum. We aren't completely free, because our decisions are shaped by forces outside our control. But we aren't completely trapped, because we still reason, reflect, and act on our own desires. Maybe the real mistake isn't in thinking we have too much free will. It's in assuming that free will has to be absolute in the first place. Maybe it's enough that we feel free, that we make meaningful choices, and that we experience our decisions as our own. Because at the end of the day, whether or not free will is an illusion, we still have to live as if it's real. We still have to make choices, take responsibility, and decide what kind of people we want to be. So, whether you believe in free will or not, there's one question that still remains. What will you choose to do with the life you have? The paradox of free will forces us to confront one of the most fundamental questions about existence. Are we truly in control of our choices? Or is our sense of agency just an illusion? Science tells us that our brains make decisions before we're even aware of them. It suggests that our thoughts, actions, and even personalities are shaped by biology, genetics, and past experiences, things we never consciously chose. If everything follows the laws of cause and effect, then where does that leave free will? On the other hand, philosophy offers a different perspective. Maybe free will isn't about acting without causes, but about acting in accordance with our own desires, thoughts, and reasoning. Maybe we don't need to be completely unbound by the universe to still experience freedom in a meaningful way. And that's where compatibilism offers a middle ground. It suggests that even in a determined world, we can still make choices that matter. We may not be able to control everything, but we can control how we respond to the forces shaping us. So, what does this mean for us? It means that whether or not free will exists in the way we imagine, we still have to live as if it does. Every day, we face choices. We experience our decisions as real. We take responsibility for our actions. Whether free will is an illusion or not, it feels real. And in the end, maybe that's what matters most. The real question isn't just, do we have free will? But what will we do with the choices we experience? Maybe you were always destined to watch this video. Maybe it was just a series of causes leading to effects that brought you here. Or maybe, in some small way, you actually chose to engage with this topic, to reflect, and to think about what it means for your own life. If you enjoyed this exploration into the paradox of free will, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Storyteller Panda for more deep dives into the mysteries of science, philosophy, and existence. What do you think? Do we have free will, or is it just an illusion? Let's discuss in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other posts. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep thinking deeply, because whether or not we truly control our choices, the search for understanding is one of the most meaningful journeys we can take.